Nasuni is, an enterprise file storage solution. And just a little bit of background about me. I started out in storage arrays, disk, and tape products over 20 years ago. And in the last 5 or 6 years have been working with cloud solutions, both cloud storage and CDN, and now cloud file storage with Nasuni. And it's been really exciting to see how storage has evolved, but in particular, how our customers have evolved and changed their storage strategies as the cloud has brought more and more new capabilities to the table. So working with Nasuni, let me just back up here a second. Over the last couple of years, I've seen it grow tremendously. We now have over 100 petabytes under management. That's all file storage. We help our customers move both their file storage and their backup to the cloud, and we offer them as kind of a simpler, lower cost approach to doing that. So our key partners are, of course, the public cloud object storage players, AWS, Microsoft, and Google. We have advanced relationships with, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Part of our appeal has been, of course, simplification and lowering costs through cloud file storage. And with that, we've really gone from the time I arrived at Nasuni, from small and medium enterprises all the way up to very large enterprises as customers. We now have companies like Adidas, AECOM, Bechtel, all as part of our customer portfolio. So it's been an exciting period for me to see Nasuni grow while I've been here. And of course, during that time, and because of that growth, we've attracted more investors over time. We have EMC as an investor. We have Goldman Sachs as an investor. And right now we stand at about $169 million in investment dollars in Nasuni. Now, there's a reason for that. We plan on giving that all back in spades to our investors. And we're showing them that we can do that actually through pretty much double-digit growth over the last couple of years.
And can I ask you a quick question on the previous slide? So you mentioned that the main partners now are, the big cloud providers. In the past, you mentioned that instead they were all object storage providers. Is this because you saw a shift of your customer from on-premises to public cloud, or is it just that public cloud is just cool and easier to mention them? I mean,
well, Enrico, it's really the latter. That's a great question. We support over a dozen private cloud providers, and it's easier just to mention the big three. It's also important for us to show folks that are new to Nasuni that we're very much aligned with the major, cloud storage vendors out there, and the strategies that they're pursuing. We're very aligned with and integrated with. But we do support a lot of private cloud vendors as well. Does that answer your question? Oh, I think Enrico just froze on me a little bit. Okay, well, let me keep rolling, and we can return to that if there's something else we need to cover there. But basically, what's been driving this growth, as I said, is a couple of years ago, we really turned our face towards large enterprise customers and wanted to try to solve their problems with the scalability of our solution. And so we've accumulated quite a lineup of great names now that are using Nasuni at a large scale. And Andres will talk to that a little bit more in depth during his session. But it's been a very exciting period of growth for us. Now, probably don't need this slide for the panelists, but it's important to clarify for everyone listening what we mean when we talk about files at Nasuni. Nasuni manages and stores files that range all across the enterprise, all of its unstructured data. We don't venture right now into the high performance computing space, and we don't necessarily focus on the home directories space, but everything in between is a vast amount of unstructured data that's growing, at estimated 200 or 300% per year in a lot of companies. Just picking out a couple of examples here, LiDAR files we're finding are easily a terabyte each. We have design files from our retail customers that are 30 gigabytes each. The size of these files over the last couple of years has been growing tremendously, and the number of files that companies are using to store their unstructured data is also just growing tremendously. I tell new sales reps that join Nasuni, look at the building outside, look at the buildings around us. Every single one of them has already been built, 2 or 3 times in a 3-dimensional model that might be as big as a terabyte before it even broke ground for it. So we see this explosion of unstructured data as really the foundation for our business. Now we can, we'll get into some good conversations, I think, later about our architecture. But basically, this explosion of unstructured data has meant a lot of pain for our customers because they're really finding that the traditional file storage setup with individual islands of storage at each location and networks connecting them to share files, is not scaling, and it's very hard to manage in any sort of central way or have any control over costs across this entire environment. And the complexity with the number of vendors that they have or are acquiring at multiple sites is growing exponentially as well. And it's very, very hard to control costs. Not only is it expensive, but just controlling the costs as unstructured data has grown. For them, has been the problem that they've come to us for, help solving. So with our architecture, which Andres will cover in depth, and so will Russ and Barry, we basically brought a much simpler approach to this environment of our customers. We've brought a cloud file storage approach where the file system itself resides in the cloud, not on a piece of hardware. And we'll explain what that means, but essentially, it allows us to do some pretty cool, innovative things, offer unlimited capacity, a built-in backup solution, disaster recovery, and synchronization, all in one cloud solution that replaces a lot of hardware and investment on the ground, so to speak. But we'll go into a lot of depth on that during the presentation by Barry and by Russ. And the built-in data protection, it's turned out, has actually become more and more of a key point for our customers. They have all this unstructured data, but they're unable to fit it into a backup window. And worse, they're unable to restore it, in the limited amount of time that they have if they lose a file or a set of files, or they have a ransomware attack. And they're relying on unstructured data, across their whole organization. So if one particular site goes down in a manufacturing supply chain, that can be disastrous for the whole flow of goods and design activities. So what we're able to do, and this is part of our value proposition, is really offer, continuous backup, very fast file restores, disaster recovery in 15 minutes, and easily, half of the reason why customers go with Nasuni is that they do not have to worry about backup. The other key advantage, as I mentioned, is we are truly a cloud native solution. So we're not hardware constrained. And coming from a hardware background myself, I understand what that means. It's because we build the file system actually in the cloud, we're able to offer an unlimited number of files, an unlimited size of files, unlimited snapshots, unlimited locations, unlimited users. This is the kind of scalability that storage folks really, appreciate about the cloud, and we've been able to kind of capture it all in one solution. Once customers move to this approach, they just don't have to worry about capacity planning anymore because we're built in a cloud-native architecture. Now, back to your question, Enrico. We have a number of private cloud storage providers that we work with. Cloudian is one, EMC ECS is another one, IBM's private cloud solution. So I do want to drop some names there. But in terms of go-to-market, we have teamed up very intimately with Amazon, Azure, and Google to hit really kind of the broad enterprise market. And sorry about the noise there. So we are co-sell partners with Microsoft. We're an advanced co-sell partner with Amazon. We connect to Google Cloud Storage, and we are expanding that relationship during this year. So we basically, our sales teams work very closely with the sales teams from Microsoft, Azure, and ultimately Google to help solve kind of enterprise storage, file storage problems for customers. We've done some advanced work with both of these companies, Amazon and Azure, to create slightly more, integrated advanced solutions in the VDI space with both of them. And so we've achieved, advanced technology partner status with Amazon. And we are a gold Microsoft partner because of that. Big change in the storage space from a business model perspective is the move to a SaaS model, an OpEx model. And we all know this is a really, really important change from a company standpoint. More and more companies having experienced SaaS in other parts of their computing environments are looking to see if they can implement that across storage. And it's a huge, huge advantage to be able to tell customers, you're only going to pay for what you need. You only have to sign up once. And as you grow, your subscription grows. So Nasuni adopted this model early on, and we have a true SaaS model for storage capacity billing. And we recently, took a look at our entire pricing structure and, adapted it to be extremely competitive on a per terabyte basis. So the entire product is sold as a SaaS model. We have 3 editions, the varying capabilities, as you can see on this slide. But this allows a customer to basically go with the version of Nasuni that fits their needs and control their costs and anticipate their costs as their capacity needs grow. I mentioned earlier, if you look at that cost per terabyte, that one of our reasons for growth is our ability to go to a company like Ralph Lauren or Adidas and really help them lower costs. And what we found during the pandemic is that this has been a fantastic position for us. The first thing a lot of our customers did was stop spending. And the second thing they did was try to cut existing costs. And so we've basically been able to tell customers that by going to a model that's cloud-based and that has built-in backup, disaster recovery, and file sharing capabilities and leverages the economics of cloud object storage, we're going to save them as much as 50%, or in some cases 70% of what they're spending across all of that hardware, networking, and software that I showed in an earlier slide. So,
hey, Ann, you mentioned that, so it's kind of like Nasuni is replacing primary file storage. I mean, is that what's happening at these customer environments? You're going in and replacing all their, current NAS solutions?
Exactly. So we have one customer, we replaced 100 NetApp arrays for them. That's just as an example. We have many customers where we'll go in and replace their existing local network attached storage for multiple locations, plus the file sharing specialized networking capabilities that they have, plus the backup license, tape drives, disk-to-disk backup hardware that they have, with one solution that's based in the cloud.
Okay, thanks.
So I just brought an example along with me. ARA has been a long-time customer of ours. We saved them $1 million plus in the first year just by taking all that capacity off of a disk and putting it in the cloud and substituting, our built-in backup solution for all that huge amount of backup they were doing. And they store a lot of radiology imaging. So their storage needs are growing by dozens of terabytes every month. And they've grown with us and we've grown with them. And they're just one example. And these kinds of numbers are very compelling for companies across multiple industries when they see that they're able to save on their unstructured data costs.
And a quick question. Some of the use cases you mentioned earlier, Microsoft are heavily incentivizing people to move to Teams or SharePoint with their project shares, their home drive shares, and things like that for collaboration reasons. Do you see that? Do you see a movement away from traditional file and your platform to theirs? Or equally, are you looking to be able to integrate or offer some value where that content and collaboration features that are available in Teams could somehow also be integrated with your platform?
Yes, I think we're going to discuss that in depth during our session here, but we absolutely see value for us in terms of being an enterprise solution, in terms of being, the data protection for that, in terms of ultimately integrating the teams. But there's lots and lots of files that are just too big to move through those solutions, and the customers are still sharing and trying to store across their enterprises. So that's a great question. So I'll close the business part of this, as I know we want to jump into the technical discussion very quickly with just a snapshot of all the folks we've been working with around the world. Like I said, my time at Nasuni has been a great, exciting experience. This has been, all these logos I think have joined us, a lot of them during just the last couple of years, because they really are catching on to the cloud in general, and the cloud for file storage is accelerating a trend for all these companies. So
one of the questions I had was on the slide that showed the customer. There was a segment that was, obviously, 30, I'd say 80% was Nasuni, but there was a small segment which was object storage. Is that object storage outside of Nasuni's control, or I could bring back the slide, but I don't want to do that. But, it was like a small segment that was object, and most of it, yeah, there you go. And most of it was Nasuni.
So I think this is Tom Rose, I'll answer that one. So what we're trying to show here is that Nasuni doesn't exist by itself without object storage. That's our backend, right? So we use Amazon S3, Azure Blob, infrequent access, any on-prem object storage. That's where we store the gold authoritative copies of all file data, all metadata, all snapshots. So Nasuni is always sold with an object storage backend. And what the slide is showing, that Nasuni plus the object storage backend is typically about half the cost of going off and buying, primary file servers, NAS boxes, backup servers, backup software, disk and tape targets, and then replicating it all for DR infrastructure, and then trying to sync stuff across the LAN. When you look at that combination, then the combination of Nasuni plus object storage is about half.
Okay, thanks.
So back when we saw you in 2018, there was a model wherein you had physical appliances located on-prem and virtual appliances located in the cloud. Are we still following a hardware model on the on-prem sites?
Yeah, so that's another good question. So I'll take that one, and I'll let Andreas. Actually, that's a good segue into his part here. Really, for the last 2 years, our model has shifted. We always only offered the hardware options as a convenience for customers that didn't have a virtual infrastructure, in these remote offices. So that was really more of just a convenience option. I would say about 75% of customers now deploy virtual machine caching appliances. We call them edge appliances. And more now we're seeing those edge appliances being deployed in the cloud because customers don't want any on-prem infrastructure. So I think that's what Andreas is going to talk about here, is the different types of cloud-only deployment options we're seeing customers use now with us. Nasuni has always been a solution designed for the cloud, and it's a cloud native. And we've had these appliances that cache copies of the frequently accessed files wherever high performance access is needed. In the past, it's been on-prem, but now more and more it's the cloud.
And Tom, because the object storage could quickly become a huge cost for everybody, even egress fees or pay for transaction. So I'm pretty sure you already optimized the solution. Actually, I know you have the solution optimized for this. But actually, can you support multiple tiers in the cloud? Not just active workloads, but infrequently access storage, things like that. So just to avoid problems in cost later.
Yeah, no, these are great questions. They're anticipating actually where we're going. I think our cache from cloud model, as you said, is optimized to minimize the egress fees and minimize the need to go back to object storage, wherever that may be, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, to retrieve files. So if we do a good job of sizing the edge appliances, usually on a pretty small, lightweight footprint, we can drive about 98% of the read traffic. And therefore, you don't have to go back to the cloud very often. So looking across all of our customers through we have a cloud-based orchestration center that lets us tell how often we have to go back to the cloud. It's usually about a 98.5% hit rate on the edge appliances. So the need to go back and retrieve data from object storage is very minimal. And so that's so egress fees are quite low, and cloud latency is minimized that way as well.
Is it dynamic? I mean, can I change the configuration of the virtual appliance to,
Yes. Yeah, great question. Actually, that's a difference of how we've implemented versus others. Our edge appliance sizes can be different in every location. And again, I don't want to, I'm stealing Andreas's thunder. Shut me off, Andreas, if I'm going too fast here. But, we can have different sized appliances, different cores, different memory, different capacity, different disk, ultra SSD versus, spinning disk, whatever you need for your workload or for the number of users hitting that appliance.